Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and in this video I'm going to talk about how to facilitate great meetings as a leader. All right, so you got put in charge of running or facilitating a meeting. Now, hopefully you've watched my other video. It's all about how to run great meetings and it talks about the meeting rhythms that we have at Self-Publishing School, all those things. If you haven't seen that video, check out that video. That gives the kind of the foundations for meetings as a whole, but this is specific to how do you facilitate great meetings, either as a leader of a team, maybe you're in a new leadership role and now you've got to facilitate and lead those meetings, or if you are the facilitator just for a meeting, then this will show you how to do that as well. Now, the key word here and what I want you to key in on is facilitator. All right, facilitators facilitate. And that's really your role and your job on this meeting is you're bringing out the voices on your team. Your job is not to talk the majority of the time. Your job is not to say everything, to lead everything, all those things. Your job is to facilitate and to empower the team and bring out voices in a way that facilitates discussion, facilitates conflict. And yes, conflict is good on meetings. It facilitates disagreement, and really it helps solve key issues and make things better. Now, if you watch my meetings video, you know that there's really 4 foundations of a great meeting. Foundation number 1 is a purpose, or some might call it the North Star or the KPI. So what's the purpose of this meeting and what's the key performance indicator or KPI that success of this meeting will lead to that, right? So if it's a marketing meeting, maybe it's revenue. If it's a customer success meeting, maybe it's student results and NPS or Net Promoter Score. But if we don't have a purpose or KPI for the meeting, then why are we even here? Why are we even having this meeting? What are the types of things that we should prioritize discussion around? So it all starts with that. So the purpose, the North Star, and the main KPI for the meeting. Number 2, a good agenda. Now I've got a different video. It's all about how we use Asana to run meetings, and you'll see exactly how we do this at Self-Publishing School and how I recommend that you do this in your company. But you need to have a good agenda. You need to have, it's written, there's timestamps, there's exactly what we're gonna cover. People have it ahead of time. They can add to it ahead of time. That's why I love Asana. That's why we use Asana. But you need to have a good agenda that has a good flow of the conversation, and you can tighten that up, you can tweak that, make improvements, but you gotta at least have a good starting point that you can work from. The third foundation of a great meeting is good prep ahead of time. So it's extremely important, 2 things here. Number 1, that you as the leader, you prepare ahead of time. So you prepare topics and all those things, but also, and this is super important, maybe you've got the agenda, you've got some basic topics, you've got some things that you want to cover, but this is probably more important, is that you hold your team accountable to them preparing ahead of time. And so one of the things I hate, and I think it can really diminish meetings, is people just coming up with random ideas of things to talk about while on the meeting. And so if it's not been prepped ahead of time, then it may or may not be the most important thing. Now, sometimes that's really good. Sometimes impromptu discussion leads to, oh man, let's scrap all this. We really need to solve this. But let's not make poor preparation an excuse for being impromptu or just being off the cuff. I want to make sure that you as the leader and then also your team, that they're preparing the things to be discussed ahead of time. And that leads me to the 4th foundation of a good meeting, which is issue solving, or really having discussions around the most pressing and important issues that need to be solved. So this should be the bulk of any longer meeting, whether it's a weekly strategic meeting, monthly strategic meeting, all those things, is you should have some serious time carved out where we're gonna bubble up the biggest issues, the things that are inhibiting us from hitting our goals or from making progress or all those things. So we wanna bubble up those things and have time to discuss the true root issues. Now here's the thing, sometimes the things that people think are true root issues might not be the biggest root issues. So you need to correct and kind of facilitate along that way and say, hey, what's the most important thing as it relates to this meeting purpose? Or what's the most important thing as it relates to this KPI? Because you might have 5, even 10 things kind of in the backlog of what we call IDS, or Identify, Discuss, Solve. It's from the book Traction. But you might have all those things. You might say, oh, those 3 things relate to this main KPI or meeting purpose. Let's start there. Right? So you're gonna have to help prioritize the discussion. You have space where there's true issue solving that gets done. But then also you wanna make sure that there's prep ahead of time and that there's what we would call a problem proposition or the root issue. Okay, so it's like, what's the root issue? What's the problem proposition? Like, why does this matter? And why do we need to solve this? What are some thoughts? And then we can get into how to solve it. But if we don't first identify the problem or the thing that we're trying to solve, then you could go off on a 45-minute discussion about nothing because we're not first clear about what we need to solve. So that's the fourth thing, create the space for that, but also create the focus for that on the meeting. Now, lastly, I want to talk about 3 tips to help you facilitate better meetings as a leader. And the first one I kind of already touched on, which is that you as the leader are responsible for holding people accountable and getting them to prep ahead of time. Okay. So if there's a bad meeting, and you're going to know because we do the rating system at the end of every meeting. So rate this meeting, scale of 1 to 10. And if it's less than an 8, you got to get feedback, right? So you're going to know if there's a bad meeting. And at the end of the day, if there is a bad meeting, that's on you. So you have to take responsibility and accountability for that and hold people accountable to doing the necessary prep ahead of time. As the leader, you hold the standard and you set the standard, okay? So what you tolerate persists. So if you tolerate poor preparation, if you tolerate, low energy, anything like that, that's gonna persist. So it's your responsibility to set the standard. Now that leads me to point number 2 or tip number 2, and that's if you recognize low energy, there's nothing worse than a low energy meeting because that means that people probably aren't actively participating, they're probably not engaged, they're probably not interested. If you see low energy or if there's something that needs to be fixed, call that out. You need to call that to attention. And I can't tell you how many times I've done this, is if I'm in a meeting or if I'm in something, we've just went off on a tangent or people aren't engaged or maybe we just got distracted. I'll say, hey guys, let's go. Let's go. We need to roll. Let's get focused. Let's raise the energy level. This is important. Let's go. And just like that quick recalibration mid-meeting makes a huge difference. And I know I've even said sometimes it's like, man, it just feels like someone just died. Like, why is everyone so quiet? Why is everyone so somber? Like, this is important. Let's raise the energy level. Let's focus the conversation and let's keep going. Number 3, and probably the most important tip here, is to make small adjustments weekly. So it's important as a leader, again, you set the standard. So when you get the feedback or when it's time to give feedback at the end of the meeting, every single week things should be getting better, right? So I always like to give feedback on, after, and before the next meeting. Right, so at the end of the meeting, when we rate the meeting, I say, hey, this is 7.5, but here's the thing that I want to happen. I need people to prepare a little bit better ahead of time. Hey, my fault, I did a poor job of setting up this conversation or whatever, and I'll own the things that I'm truly accountable for, and when in doubt, you own it. But I'm going to give feedback and give accountability, just continually make things better. So every single week, you should be making things better. You should be giving room for improvement, all those things. And because if you're not growing, you're dying. And hard work and continuous improvement, that's one of our core values here at Self-Publishing School. So you need to be continually tweaking, improving, making things better. And the end result is constant improvement and great meetings that people love to show up to. They're engaged, they're fun, and you're truly solving real issues that then cascades into everything else that person does, everything else that the team does, as they say,
wow, the company is recognizing, bubbling up, and addressing the root issues. And so now I'm more engaged in my job.
Because you know this, both as a leader, as a facilitator, but also as a participant, there's nothing worse than being in a pointless meeting and you're just like, oh my gosh, it sucks the life out of you. And it's hard to go back and do your job because you just feel like you've just wasted so much of your life and so much of your time on this pointless meeting. So that's it. That's how to facilitate great meetings. We covered the foundation of good meetings and some tips and things that you can do to be a better facilitator. Remember that key word, which is facilitator. And be interested, not interesting, all right? So be interested and pull out conversation from the folks who are on your meeting, and this is gonna lead to just much better meetings. I'd love to hear your takeaways. Comment below and let me know. Right now, scroll below this video, comment and let me know what were your biggest takeaways from this video, and how can you use what you've just learned to facilitate better meetings, all right? What were your biggest takeaways, and how can you use what you just learned to facilitate better meetings? Maybe if you're an overachiever, you can also comment below, what do you do to facilitate great meetings? Any tips or things that I missed, comment below, let me know. I read and respond to every single comment, so I can't wait to hear what you come up with and to see your comments on this video. As always, click the like button, click the subscribe button, subscribe to this channel, and also to the 7 Figure Principles podcast, and I'll see you in the next video. Talk soon.